Welcome to the Labatt Postgame Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr, film analyst for Blue White Illustrated, and I had a good look on what was going on in this game. I know what happened, I know why it happened, but I think a lot of this, we all know what happened. But here is the symbolic postgame notes. Here are my notes. They do not matter. Penn State loses 22-21 to Northwestern, and here we are in fully uncharted territory. Penn State is 3-3. They are 0-3 in the Big Ten, and they do not have a functioning defense. They are now playing with one side of the ball, essentially, and that side of the ball is not playing particularly well. There's a lot of stuff going on offense and defense that is causing some problems for the Nittany Lions, but from play calling on down, it's all bad. You don't get to this point with it going well, for things making sense. So I'm still going to do what I do. I'm going to tell you the why behind it. But I totally understand that the why is not necessarily what you guys are interested in here on the show. So we're going to be talking to you on the Labatt Postgame Show to get your thoughts, opinions, and feelings. But I know what they are at this point, which is fire James Franklin. Somebody said fire the entire coaching staff. You cannot run a team without an entire coaching staff. I appreciate the zeal, but that is UCLA proved everybody wrong, right? By firing all of their coordinators and their head coach within 2 weeks and winning the next two games. So is Penn State going to follow that formula? We are now in a very hard decision point for athletic director Pat Kraft. He's in the middle of a stadium rebuild. He's got a coach with a large buyout, and he's got a mutinous fan base that is absolutely unhappy, and justifiably so, with what was at one point a top 2 team. Also, this is a guy who said in February, we got to get a wide receiver. Publicly cried to the world, let's get a wide receiver for this team to help them be good at football. After already getting 2 in the portal, after already paying a large sum of money for Jim Knowles, they went out and they got Trevor Pena, who I don't think had a catch in this game. He may have had one pass attempt that was a screen pass that's not necessarily actually 2 catches for 5 yards. One of them being a pseudo run on a swing pass screen. Play calling was bad today. It wasn't as bad as it seems, as always, but also there are these critical moments where things don't go well for the Nittany Lions. I don't have a read on what happened on the 3rd and 4th downs to end the game, because things are flying at me as fast as they're flying at you while I'm trying to get ready for this game. And the winning and losing is hanging in the balance, and I got to write the articles and post things, and I apologize for being a little late. Normally, I'm ready to go at the whistle. But normally, over the last 5 years, Penn State has either been the clear winner of a game or they have lost a game. All of these games against unranked opponents, all of these games against winless teams, that suddenly they're losing has disrupted my flow. And I apologize for being just slightly late. It's a rough one out there. It's a rough one out there for the Nittany Lions. What happens next? I don't know. I said after the last show, after the last game, any criticisms of James Franklin were valid. Any questions about what they had built here in Happy Valley are fair. Wanting to say fire James Franklin, I don't know who the other coaches are that you would hire and you would try to go and get. So like coaching shortlist, I don't know those things. But there are consequences to going 0-3 and losing to Northwestern and UCLA. Absolutely. Even at the situation from the defensive side of the ball and their scheme and their players not necessarily gelling right away. Northwestern had 282 yards. Penn State had 274 yards. And it's more of the same. There's nothing new here. Northwestern drives of 12, 8, 10, 8, 11, and they ended the game with the ball. They had a 7-minute drive. And it just depends on what's the flavor of the week. And for a team that has not made, historically, a ton of boneheaded mistakes, Penn State has been generally a team that doesn't make mental mistakes. But the jumping off sides, returning the ball from 2 yards deep on a turnaround where you're the up back and you're not the guy that returns the ball and suddenly you get the ball at the 10-yard line. Of all the things, that's the one that didn't hurt them. But a muffed punt that allowed a field goal, 3-point difference in this game. These are the things that a lot of bad teams do. And Penn State is now a bad team. They don't stop the run. They do not complete passes on an efficient level. What did Drew Allar end the game at? 65% completion percentage. Once again, there's just some situations I feel like he was put in a bad spot a couple of times, and it doesn't matter because, the interception at the beginning of the game, you can go look at my social media, break that play down. It's just lost in the wind. That conversation of nuance and details lost in the wind. The receiver ran the wrong route, but it doesn't matter because the quarterback shouldn't have thrown to a guy that looked lost. And suddenly you have a touchdown that isn't a touchdown. Suddenly, I think that led to points. James Franklin, I believe in his postgame press conference, is going to talk about turnovers and points off turnovers because that's what happened in this game. This was going to be an ugly win. Penn State was going to be an ugly win team. They had an opportunity for 28 points. They came away with 21. They punted the ball a couple of times. And I was trying to do this in the middle of the game, but I haven't been able to figure it out. I'm going to try and do this for you here live if you give me a second. I don't know the last time that the Penn State defense forced a 3 and out. There were none in this game. 5, 12, 8, 10, 5, 8, 4, 11, and 8. So even on a drive where they allowed negative 14 yards, they still gave up a first down. It's just the bottom has fallen out for the Penn State football team, and the blood is in the water. The chum is out there. The Sharks were circling and now dragging the team under. Consequences, right? Consequences are a thing. And people want there to be a call, like they want consequences for the actions that have happened on the field. And for whatever reason, I think we got to the point where Katron Allen was the lead back in this game. That happened. They started rotating on the offensive line. They pulled the Band-Aid off there. They pulled the ripcord and said, we're going to start mixing and matching. Cooper Cousins maybe isn't back, and something's going on there where he hasn't been available because TJ Shanahan has been playing. I think he's been playing okay, honestly. But then rotating right tackles, nothing seemed to spark the offense into gear. So offensive coordinator, sunk cost at defensive coordinator, head coach. I asked James Franklin this week, how long of a leash does somebody get? When do you know it's ready to make time to make personnel changes? When is it time that you have to make something happen? And he said, the longer your experience is with the program, the more opportunity you're going to get. Well, Liam Clifford, Kyron Hudson, other than Devontae Ross, what have these receivers done to merit that trust that they are out there? And I, again, defer to I don't know everything about practice, but my God, Kyron Hudson dropped a third down pass at the exact same time in the second quarter as he did the previous week, and failing to convert a third down in a critical situation where Penn State went 3 and out and had to punt the ball and give momentum back to the other team. And the only thing that was different this week is that Northwestern muffed the punt, and then Penn State was able to capitalize on that. Greg here. Jerry Jones is the only common element in the Cowboys' failure. James Franklin is the only common element to Penn State's failure to return to national prominence. Yeah, he has gotten them to a position they were not going to be in. There is the truth of he got them to this point, but it seems that there is a ceiling here for Penn State. They got to one drive away from the national championship game and have flatlined since. Flatly. Non-conference, said this on the Tailgate Show, if you play like that in the non-conference, it's risky because then it looks like you haven't played good in any single game if you're working on stuff. You're trying to get these receivers in rhythm with the quarterback. Devontae Ross is good, but Devontae Ross was banged up to start the year, and so they have had no rhythm on offense. Stephen Light, thank you very much. Stephen said he'd be here for the Tailgate Show and the Postgame Show. Wasn't going to watch the game. I respect that. At this point, if you want me to just give you guys a book report on what happened in the game so that you don't have to spend 3 hours being frustrated, I can do that for you here on the Postgame Show. I'm really good at group projects. In this one, I get to talk because in high school, I was so excited to just be in a group and talk, and maybe I wasn't doing as much and I distracted everybody. But that's what we're doing here. That's what I professionally grew up to do, a group project where I just talk to you guys. Okay. Brett says, T. Frank, thank you for the coverage. So many things to talk about, but it's just not worth it to dissect. The storm is thick and there is an end somewhere, just not sure when. Yeah, I do want to get to the problems that are on defense because this is the crux of the issue. And also, we do have to get to our defensive player of the game, and we have to get to a couple of other things here on the postgame show, including discussing, what happens next. And I don't know what happens next for this team, especially at the end with Allar going off and limping into the locker room, being carted in the locker room, limping off the field. Oh boy. Things are going to rapidly change in the next 48 hours for Penn State football, one way or another, at least in that regard. It did not look like a good injury for Drew Allar. Crazier things have happened. You don't want to speculate on injuries, but that is one where it's open to say it's questionable whether he will be available to be on the road at, wait for it, Iowa. Can you believe it? Once again, the quarterback gets hurt before the game against Iowa. We're going to be going into this with an air of mystery, and Penn State might be starting, not their starting quarterback against the against the Hawkeyes at Kinnick Stadium at night. This is wild, but this is also the Labatt postgame show. And by the way, I don't condone excessive drinking, but I understand if you need an extra one tonight. This fall, nothing goes better with college football than ice cold Labatt beer and Labatt Blue Light, because when you bleed blue and white, you drink blue and light. And if you can say one thing about this season, it has been epic tailgate weather from beginning to end. There has been mostly good weather. There hasn't been as much rain. It was a perfect fall day today for homecoming. Everything was great until they kicked off. And of course, Labatt is great even after that. Born in Canada, brewed in the USA, Labatt has been a game day tradition for fans who know how to celebrate each first down and every touchdown, which are slim at this point. Here's the best part. When you stock up on Labatt, you can score big off the field too. Just visit rewards.labattusa.com to get rewarded with a buy beer, get gear program. So whether you're tailgating with 107,000 fans or just watching with friends at home, that 409 is dwindling. Crack a Labatt Blue or Labatt Blue Light. Make every Saturday a win. Please drink responsibly. Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. And of course, this is becoming... Before, this was like I was very excited to do this segment because there was always something good to talk about. And now I'm struggling to find our defensive players of the game. And we're going to get to that now. So, despite jumping off sides to begin the game, we're going to go with Dennis Sutton as our defensive player of the game. I don't feel great about it, but overall, Penn State's biggest problem is nobody's getting off blocks. So, scheme, safeties, linebackers, 4-2-5, if your defensive line is incapable of creating a problem for the offensive line of the opponent. And by the way, this Northwestern offensive line is a decent offensive line, but I didn't say good. Like this is a decent offensive line. They don't make mistakes. They get their blocks, but they don't dominate anybody. That Penn State, from an athletic perspective, from a star percentage, all those things, they were the more talented unit. Athletically, physically, it was, and by the way, I'm trying to talk about Dennis Sutton. He was the best player on the front of actually getting off blocks and making tackles, but he only had 4 in the game, 2 solo, which I believe were for no gains, not for tackles for loss. Penn State had just 2 tackles for loss. Again, creating negative plays. In the tailgate show, I think it was Brett, somebody was asking me about blitzing on early rundowns to try and get negative plays. Yeah, they did. Anything you can think of, say a thing. Penn State has been trying it on defense. You want to go with a tilted nose tackle? They've been doing that. You want to go with some odd 5-man looks where you're having basically 3-down linemen and Keon Wiley as an outside linebacker lined up over the tight end in a really old school Sam look? Yes, they've been doing that too. Dom DeLuca isn't great at playing linebackers, or I keep saying that. He's not good at playing linebacker in space. He's not good at playing guards in space, right? So what do? They throw him like Braveheart at the offensive line to absorb a block. And then he gets thrown out of his gap, so now Kenny Wosley's trying to fill the A gap because that's where Dom DeLuca was supposed to be. So they are giving up gobs of yards in the area that they can't give up gobs of yards in. This is no longer about 4-2-5. This is no longer about that stuff. They cannot fundamentally stop the run. And what is happening is late in games, they are pressing, and they are getting desperate, and then players are playing outside the scheme trying to make a play. But they fundamentally can't get off blocks up front. Alonzo Ford picked a game to have his worst game of the season. Of the guys up front that have been playing well on that defensive line, he's been one of them. One of the defensive tackles that's held up through this barrage of plays over the last 2 games going back to Oregon and UCLA. Not today. Today, somebody tweeted at me like multiple times he's been on the ground. Like every time you look up, he's on the ground, and that's accurate. He had a bad game today. There's just nobody that can step up and stop the run, and that's it. Like as a defense, if you cannot stop the run, if you cannot do something on the defensive line to cause that offensive line's rhythm to slow down, and that's truthfully what happened in this game. Is Penn State once again 2.8 yards per carry. And, a lot of this is the negative team rushing yards. There's 18 rushing yards taken off because of, the QB kneel and a bunch of dumb stuff like sacks. They averaged, what is this year? They had 120 yards between the two backs, a touchdown, a back-breaking, game-ending drive where they can't stop plays. You're right, Brett. I could break all this down, and I don't know if it matters, but that's what's going on defense. And then what happens when you can't stop the run and you're allocating all of those bodies into the box? Now you don't have the coverage that you wanted on the back end. This defense is built to stop big plays in the passing game. They're not stopping anything right now because they're playing constant man coverage. When you blitz or you add 5 men to the line of scrimmage, now it's 5-on-5 on the back end. And even teams like Northwestern, you allow them to stay on schedule. 65% completion percentage, 17-26, 163 yards and a touchdown. There's nothing here that is like excellent. There's nothing to say that Northwestern is suddenly a team. It was Penn State's failure to stop them because of the obvious 1-2-3 in football. You can't stop the run. You start pressing to stop the run with bodies, blitzes, etc. Now you're playing man coverage, and suddenly A.J. Harris is falling on his face in man coverage for a touchdown. Kenny Wosley's out there because Zion Tracy got banged up, and now you're playing a redshirt freshman who makes a couple of mistakes, allows a 3rd down, 2 third-down conversions in this game because he's a young guy. And Corey says the recruiting fallout from this stretch is going to hurt for years. Yep, it already did. Khalil Taylor falling off, decommitting. Keemon Spell opened up his recruitment. These are 2027 borderline and 5-star players. Khalil Taylor, Pittsburgh area player, and these are in the heart of Penn State's recruiting territory. It's not good. None of this is good. There is not a comeback. There's not a redemption arc from this. Like, they're out of the college football playoff. They've let the slide continue. And where does it end? Because we were talking about that 3-game stretch with Iowa, Ohio State, and Indiana. Like, we're in it. We're in it. They got a bye week. That's the only thing right now that feels like it's going to stop it. Because let's talk about what happens next for all of the, and I know what I said I stand by what I said in the tailgate show of like, it's too bad there is this reality that keeps happening. Like, football's supposed to be fun, but this is not fun for anybody. Like, this is not fun for fans to have all this happen. And you go to Kinnick Stadium, a team that wants to run the football. What are we expecting in that game now? There's nothing I've seen on film that makes me think this team can stop the run, let alone against a team that Iowa has a talented offensive line. Size is not even all of it. Like, I'm wondering, like, I don't want to assume too much from my position, right? What I see on film is they're trying to be more active at times up front. So now are they changing the coaching? Are they now changing and reacting and trying to pivot in the middle of the season? And suddenly now you got guys that are playing without confidence, or are they just getting beat because Penn State's senior defensive tackles that kind of held the line last year are no longer there. Mech Engineer says, complete rebuild necessary. Well, At least you're not throwing away the 2025 season if you do that. Gary says lack of leadership, discipline, and accountability. I would have not said any of those things about a Penn State football team before this year, but absolutely this team is pressing and making dumb mistakes. Devontae Ross. Penn State fans have begged for a guy to return the ball. And finally, they get Devontae Ross back there, who's done some decent things. He hasn't ripped off any big explosive plays or been a difference maker from back there, but he gave you some hope like something was going to happen, right? And then muffs a punt and leads to points for Northwestern. Special teams blocks a punt in this game and then muffs a punt on the other side and then decides the up back, who wears 34, is going to run the ball out and start a drive at the 10. Discipline is absolutely a problem. Denai Sutton, our defensive player of the game, jumps off sides, and then they pull him from the game, right, for a series. But do you think they're gonna bench him for that? He's the one guy making plays out there. So yes, discipline, accountability, leadership, all these things right now are lacking from Penn State from a player-led level. And when it starts from the top, that's. I don't have, there's no counter to that. That is absolutely what is happening this year in particular from this team. Goonie, he says, I spent my 30th birthday watching my alma mater lose to Northwestern at home. It's only up from here. Penn State, this team lost its fight, Florida State 2024 vibes. Yeah, it kind of feels like that knockout punch that Oregon delivered them, they have not gotten off the mat from. By the way, happy birthday, buddy. I don't know why you gave me money on your birthday, but happy birthday. If you come to Anti-Fragile on a Friday before a home football game where I am to hang out and talk about football, I'll buy you a beer as a thank you. And as a happy birthday. By the way, your 30s don't have to be terrible. I think my 30s have gotten okay, but I know what it is. When you hit that 30, you're like, oh man, I'm almost old at this point. Yeah. But anyway, if you're just 30. Jeff D says, T. Frank, when Franklin gets fired, can we have a discussion tonight for those who think the program will fall off a cliff? NIL has to be a backstop. This is a great question, or this is an interesting discussion about the program model, NIL, and its role within player loyalty. So, a couple of things. I do think right now, in this very moment, Penn State is fairly handcuffed to James Franklin. Unless those donors that don't like Franklin, who have had their hands in their pockets and haven't been writing checks for a couple years, if suddenly all of them decide that they would like to write the exit ramp, if they see the opportunity, because that's money is money. There is not an infinite source of it, which is why the Big Ten seems to be interested in investment capital, which I think is just a huge mistake. But if you're shelling out that money to get rid of your coach, do you have the NIL money then to make sure the players stay in the program? Are the players going to want to stay in the program without the head coach or after an abysmal losing season? Typically, this team has been a resilient group overall. I know 2017, if you go back that far and some of the losses they sustained when they were talented, there has been some of that. But, that's not there anymore. There's going to be fractures. The stress of the situation has caused fissures in the team that have led to losses. What happens in the locker room after this? Again, I don't like to speculate on those things. I don't like to talk about things that I'm not privy to. But all of this comes down to, as Jeff pointed out, people can be made to stay. They can be encouraged to stay. I don't know how that's going to go, because you've got to make some financial decisions, the part of the decision if you want to fire the head coach. And of course, the money you paid to the coordinators, that's not going well right now. A. Campbell, is it possible this senior talent leadership is simply not good? Dawkins, Allar, Nick, Dom, play the young guys, nothing to lose. Yeah, at this point, there is nothing to lose. They did, in certain situations, they were forced to play the young guys, Campbell. So, again, Kenny Wosley played, a redshirt freshman. He made some mistakes, allowed some third down conversions. They played Jameer Joseph in this game in the nickel, which is interesting to see. That was a development we haven't seen because, he played primarily that outside corner to start. Apparently, he's been getting some work on the interior. But, it's very clear that the senior leadership is not good in whatever short form of leadership that you want. But let's start with player-led leadership by example. So Nick Dawkins struggling on certain blocks that lead to negative plays on a Devontae Ross end around because he didn't block the defensive end that got upfield, that's his job there. Dom DeLuca, playing. I'm deciding whether I want to tell you that the text, basically open up my text thread with people during the game. It almost is at times like they're playing with 10 men on the field, and Northwestern was 100% attacking Dom DeLuca early in the game. They were setting up formations to run at him. They were overloading one side so that the weak side linebacker becomes your Mike linebacker over the center, and then running that way. And they got him a couple times because of what happened there. So, yeah, but now who are the young guys that you're going to play? I think they're going to be forced, if Drew Allar is injured, they're going to be forced to play Ethan Grunkmeyer. And the guys that you're talking about here, Dawkins, I don't know who the center is that's going to come in and replace Nick Dawkins, because Cooper Cousins would be that guy as far as the young next generation of player. He's not available. He was out this game. So, Nick Singleton, that's already happened where he saw how many carries in this game? 7 carries. He got 1 drive in this game. And so, Campbell, what you're saying is happening. It's just not happening at receiver. And in a game that I thought that the passing game was fine. So let's talk about one drive. If you don't mind getting to the X's and O's for just 1 second to set up, and this is fodder for you if you don't like Andy Kotelnicki. 2 things here that I want to talk about play calling. The first is the close-up magic. Like, ooh, where'd the SD card go? What? Oh, nope, nobody saw me throw it behind me, right? Nobody saw that. When they go tempo, and I'm actually going to try and get up and see if I'm tethered in. So if you ever see a guy standing like this, right? So just like hiding behind the offensive line, the ball's going to that guy. Khalil Dinkins is 6'4", right? On the play where they threw it to Liam Clifford, they go hurry up tempo, overset the line to one side, and they have Khalil Dinkins lined up at fullback behind the center, literally like hide and seek. And then behind him is Katron Allen. And again, I asked James Franklin earlier this week, if you're going up against a team that doesn't make a lot of mental mistakes, how do you play that team? And then he just described Northwestern because he didn't want to describe the game plan. Like, that's fine. He's not going to tell me, yeah, we're going to call more straight up plays. But no, they didn't. They went into the bag of tricks again. This is a team that doesn't make mistakes. Penn State knew that going into this game. We had a conversation on Monday and Wednesday about that. And Andy Kotelnicki called the don't look at this guy play. Don't look at the guy hiding in the backfield behind the center, because what they want to do is just line up and you don't pay attention to where somebody lines up, and suddenly that guy's open on a deep route and the receiver is throwing the ball. Now, yes, was Katron Allen a check down on that? He was. Do you want your receiver having options on a play to be making high-low calls? No, so he ran it and got a yard, 2 yards, something like that. And then the end-around play on a team that does not bite on things. They don't make mistakes. The linebackers play their assignments, and they don't bleep up. Running an end-around puts your team in a situation of going east-west instead of north-south when the north-south was working. Katron Allen running downhill was working. So then in the third quarter, I want to get to this drive correctly, because they didn't have a lot of drives in the third quarter. They didn't have a lot of drives in this game. One drive in the first quarter. 1, 2, 3. They would have had 3 drives in the third quarter, but what happened was there was the muffed punt, and so they got a second chance and took 9 plays to go 26 yards and get a touchdown. So Northwestern gave them an extra drive. Otherwise, it would have been 3 drives again in the first half. You are suffocating yourself if you cannot get off the field. Then in the third quarter, the second drive, it was, I believe, 9:13 left in the third quarter, their second drive. So they get a first down, and then they go shot play, quarterback draw. So they try to take a shot. It's not there. Allar tries to check it down. Katron Allen Not as good in the passing game as Nick Singleton, but he's out there all the time now because that's been the decree, right? Okay, totally fine. He was not there to see the check down. Allar tried to throw him the check down. He was trying to convert into a block because I guess he thought Allar was going to run, and so that's an incomplete pass. Then they run another play, which is another shot play. They're trying to get Katron Allen running up the seam against a linebacker. Allar reads it. It's not there. It's not clean. The guy didn't make a mistake. He stayed on top of Katron Allen. And then they ran vertical routes and stop routes on other parts of the play. So essentially, Kyron Hudson was a dummy route. And then you're running a wheel to one side, a slot wheel. And on the other side, you're trying to run a pick route. Well, the pick route doesn't even come close to working. So now you've got 3 vertical routes running into coverage that are not open. And so Allar has to throw the ball away. And so then it's 3rd and 10. And now it's 3rd and 10. They call a quarterback draw. And Northwestern does a great job of caging in the run. They know it's coming because of course they did. Everyone saw it was coming. And so you punt. I don't mind being aggressive. I don't mind shot plays. But again, the tempo and the issues that it's just a compiling issue of mistakes and unforced errors and a lack of ability to, I will say, I think the defense is doing everything they can to adapt. That is a personnel issue. It is 100% on the personnel at this point that is not working. On the offensive side of the ball, there is this stubbornness and inability to remove the lateral plays. There were fewer of them in this game, but they were still in there. And then, of course, there's the plays that should work and then don't. Nick Singleton had an opportunity to rip off a long touchdown run and got 6 yards. The play was designed for him to do so. He had to break 1 tackle, but there's the fatal flaw because I think he's broken 3 tackles so far this season. Hector says, little game James. Yeah, now it's not big. The criticism was he could win any game that wasn't important. And how much you long for those days, guys? Zach says, what is different about this team than I've been watching for the last 5 years is they beat up on a team like this and out-physical them. Yes. And I do think that there is a talent. There was an overestimation of general talent by myself. I'm going to point the finger at myself first in this situation. And then I'm going to say, generally, people didn't want to hear that Zane Durant and Denida Sutton were not Abdul Carter in the offseason. People didn't want to hear that. You had some concerns that Zariah Fisher was your number 2 defensive end. And then, of course, Max Granville gets hurt. And now you're playing Chaz Coleman. And Chaz Coleman, has cooled off since playing in the Big Ten. So there is a lack of talent, out-physicaling the other team up front. And I think fatigue is a part of it, but in this game, I can't say fatigue was a part of the problem. They played Owen Wafel way more. I actually thought he flashed pretty well. You know what? I'm now gonna change my pick for defensive player of the game to Owen Wafel for no reason other than I forgot to do the live read, so I apologize. The defensive player of the game is Owen Wafel. The defensive player of the game is brought to you by State College criminal defense attorney Matt McClenahan. Matt is a fan of the show. He's a friend. He's a guy who is in the State College community. He's of the State College community, Penn State alum and Penn State football super fan. He's been to, I think at this point, 130 consecutive games. Very accessible. We text all the time. He thought they were going to win. First off, he was fading them and then said his heart was going to win out and said he was going to pick them to win 38-13 or something like that. But more importantly to this moment, he's been a criminal defense lawyer for over 24 years. Most of you're not going to need a criminal defense attorney lawyer. An attorney lawyer is redundant. That's like an ATM machine. But if you ever need one, you need to know a name. It is not a moment for you to be like, I don't know. Let's call around and ask a friend. MattMlaw.com if you ever need him. Okay, yeah. Defensive player of the game is Owen Wafel because why not? Maybe the team is looking too far ahead to Rutgers, says 627K. Yeah, I don't. That one's on the table. Rutgers is on the table. I thought Rutgers was looking spicy early in the year, and I think they still are. I don't know where the bottom is, honestly. From a tactical perspective, I feel like I've laid it out pretty clearly of what the problems are. I don't see a solution. The defensive tackles, they're playing them all now. They're all on the field. This game, they played all their defensive tackles, and it was not working today. Linebacker, freshman, I guess. Do you need to move Amari Campbell to Will and play Anthony Specca at Mike? Are you creating two weaknesses there? Everything is on the table. So poor coaching decisions, says Showtime. Poor tackling, just a lot. I saw the ankle, doesn't look good. The only thing left is bowl eligibility. Need 3 wins. So I think I can share this now. The statute of limitations is over at this point because we're talking about bowl games. So we're going. We got a trip this winter, and we're going for Christmas, right? And I said to my wife after we booked the flight, "Man, I don't want them playing on the first round of the playoffs because soon after we've got to start packing." And I just the timing of all things and the holidays and everything. It's a bummer. Don't got to worry about that now. That's fine. That's not happening. Schedule will be a lot different. Okay, so Drew is out for the season, says head coach James Franklin. That is devastating for him. Now I have to wonder, what the future is for Drew Allar. Okay, let's just stop for the humanity of the situation. Drew Allar, you cannot like him, but this is a dude who put everything into this season. And to go out like that is pretty heartbreaking. That's hard. Gosh, I feel really bad. I just feel really bad for a guy like that who has been a great representative of the program for the last 4 years and has done everything the right way. Has he been the quarterback? I mean, I don't know if it's the all-time, everyone can recite all of the all-time busts at quarterback for Penn State, but to not even be able to finish your senior year with everything the buildup of it, I mean, that is the ultimate exclamation point, period, on this particular season. Now Ethan Grunkmeyer is going to step into the fray, and we're going to see how he does. We can talk about Ethan Grunkmeyer if you want here. I got a scouting report on Ethan Grunkmeyer as far as I know what he can do. Who's calling his plays. Is James Franklin the head coach long-term here at Penn State? Again, I believe James Franklin is going to be the head coach as long as he decides to be the head coach because of the financial reasons. I do believe that there is a reason where if Penn State wanted to move on from him it's all there, right? 0-3 to start the Big Ten against UCLA and Northwestern team. And again, I don't want to take anything away from Northwestern fans. I'm sure they are super happy right now. This is a team that has a formula to win. It's not like they can win in a bunch of different ways. And if you can just get them off schedule on offense, then you can beat them. And if you can out-talent them on offense, you can beat them. And Penn State could not do either of those things, despite having more talent than Northwestern. Whoo, boy. A little lightheaded. And actually just a little parched. Not a little lightheaded. But yeah, talking a lot here. Can't recruit for a 4-3 and switch to a 4-2-5. Need different types of players. So this is an interesting situation. This is an interesting question. Or not question. This is a statement, an opinion. I don't think that this is vastly different than anything they've ever done. Guys, they were running a 4-2-5 last year. Cam Miller and Zion Tracy played 89% of the snaps last year. There is nothing different about this team other than which players they're putting near the box. And I don't think Zakee Wheatley played particularly well today because part of his job as the senior is to be an enforcer in the run game and to come downhill and play the run hard. And there were some missed tackles from him. He was slow getting into his gap a couple of times. That's a personnel thing. But what's the difference between him and Jalen Reed? Jalen Reed would have been playing a similar role from a different position last year. The defensive line has not developed to the point to stop the run and protect the linebackers. That has nothing to do with how many linebackers are on the field. They put 3 linebackers out there today. And you saw a similar result. Now, again, it was 4 yards a carry instead of 6 yards a carry. They didn't have the quarterback scramble as a part of the game, but they couldn't stop the run. Consistently allowed drives to continue. I don't think that's the issue. And they had to replace their defensive coordinator no matter what. Their defensive coordinator decided to go to North Carolina. To Clemson. And they went out and they got the best defensive coordinator in college football per the results. And the defense that he built and the way it played and the attention to detail and the execution of it we didn't make all that up. And yes, I know they lost a couple of games in the regular season. And you know, I'm not an expert on the Ohio State situation, but he put together 2 top 1 defenses in college football at Oklahoma State and Ohio State. This isn't a mirage that he's not good at football. But the situation here isn't working. And I do believe, again, the difference in the style of play, the difference in the philosophy of how to use the defensive line, absolutely. But that's not a 4-2 versus 4-3 issue. That is how you're designing your defense to use the defensive tackles. Again, in just a classical, in a normal way that a lot of teams do. And yes, if you want to say you can't recruit to a 4-3, they were recruiting to a 4-2-4-3, but the way they were using attack style defensive linemen, moving them around athletically, is different than the way they're using them now. But again, it doesn't matter. Anything I say doesn't matter because they lost to Northwestern. A. Campbell back here, he says, I'm a Franklin apologist, and his record here doesn't always reflect the situation as a positive impact, but he's got to stop hiring Big 12 offensive coordinators starting tomorrow. I had this thought and then thought to myself I was being an elitist as somebody who is covering a Big Ten team, but apparently it's true, right? They've got some defense in the league now because they've had to acquire other teams from non-Big 12 conferences as natural selection is happening with conferences. But yeah, safeties are better in the Big Ten. Defensive lines are better in the Big Ten. People don't make giant brain farts in the Big Ten that just give you plays. And so Mike Yurcich's explosive plays of lateral distortion, he had the same general concepts as Andy Kotelnicki, who had the same general concepts as Kirk Shiraka, who had the same general concepts as smart players and smart coaches in football who use these particular schemes more effectively. But yeah, maybe go to the SEC for a play caller. I don't know. Maybe go to a Big Ten team. I heard somebody outside Wegmans say, you know what? Just go get Lincoln Riley. And I thought to myself, yeah, just go get a head coach, right? Just go get a head coach. And then I said, then I realized, oh wait, that's what Ryan Day did at Ohio State to go get Chip Kelly. So maybe the funny thing is Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma, Big 12 head coach. Now he's at least been in the Big Ten for a little bit. And I don't know, who knows, right? And Eric, he's just here giving us a $5 donation to the channel. Appreciate you guys. And thank you, by the way. It's not just that I want to talk to the people who are, donating to the channel, but as the solo host here on the show and you as my co-host, and there's 1,000 people watching and everyone's very unhappy. And there's some stuff I just get too distracted and I don't want to be reading the comments and then trying to talk to you at the same time. So the super chats are super helpful, and we appreciate the donations, the passion, the zeal. Obviously, that doesn't end with Penn State being 3-3. If not, this is the thing: is listen, I also grew up near Buffalo, near Canada. I understand what it's like to be in the darkness. I don't want to do a Bane voice, but I was born in the darkness. I understand what it's like to root for a team that it makes you red-faced embarrassed. To this day, I do not wear Buffalo Bills colored jerseys in public. First off, I don't wear jerseys, but I will wear a black Bills shirt so that you're like, is that a Bills shirt? Because it was too embarrassing for most of my teens, 20s, and very late into life. So I get it. I get what it's like to not want to publicly support your team out loud. So yeah, I get what I can empathize where you're going through. I might be the best person to guide you through this. And the thing is you focus on the draft. You get really obsessed with what makes quarterbacks good and then watch your team pick the wrong quarterback for 15 years. Bill says, just as a side note here, USC should be a dynasty with all the talent in California. Oh, yeah. I see. The thing is, like, I don't want to be talking about. I don't want to talk about the Bills. I don't want to talk about Buffalo because this is the Penn State show. But yeah, I don't root for the. I am football only. This is it. I tried to get into hockey. I don't get into hockey. So at the very least, like, I don't have to worry about the Sabres being bad. Because Terry Pagula saved the Bills, and then I guess we sacrificed the Sabres for that to happen. Hakeem the Dream, he says, Coach Franklin is a good man, great recruiter, average coach, and a horrible game coach. He has to go immediately. Penn State needs to get an offensive guru like Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel of the Dolphins, who is doing a terrible job coaching the Dolphins right now? I mean, I'm not sorry. I don't want to dump on any idea because I don't know. So this was a question earlier this week, and let's talk about it from this angle. And then I do want to talk about Ethan Grunkemeyer because that is now a very salient point that may have a spark here for the Nittany Lions and may have something that can help this team turn around. At Iowa, I don't know. Like, this is rough. This is some choppy water. But let's entertain the idea that James Franklin is gone, right? And this is not me saying, like, I don't think James Franklin should be the coach. I'm just pointing to the roadblocks that we all know as to whether or not he is still going to be the head coach after all of this is through, right? So, magic wand time, right? What do you want as a coach? Tell me in the chat what you want in your next head coach. Because at some point, no matter what, there's going to be a new next head coach at Penn State. What are you looking for? So, my knee-jerk reaction is offensive coordinator, right? Offensive wizard. Quarterback guru. Those haven't always worked out. We just talked about Lincoln Riley has struggled at USC. And I don't know, again, I don't cover USC. I don't know all of the pitfalls and dangers and problems out in Southern California that he's had to work through. But this is the point. Lojo says literally anything else. I think that there's I think here's the thing. The point I'm driving at is you don't want to overcorrect and go to the opposite thing, right? So James Franklin is the CEO archetype of a head coach where he delegates. He is the captain of the ship. He is not pulling the sail up. He is guiding the ship. He is setting the direction. And then his crew, his first mates, go out and carry his commands out and is the person who he's giving the orders and then letting not micromanaging things. If you then go and get an offensive coordinator who is like going to call plays, does your defense suffer? Does that player give enough attention to the defense? Does linebacker you fall further? These are things that happen, by the way. Recruiting, the energy and time it takes to recruit, the energy and time it takes to be a head coach for talent development, staff development, all those things. I think you still need a guy who's going to have that CEO approach. And Nick Saban was that guy as well, right? He was a defensive coach. He was obviously very involved in the defense, but he let the offense hands off, right? Here's the problem. All things being equal, you still need a guy who has the big vision for the program and somebody who is going to allow the program to, from a functional standpoint, be successful and isn't so into the weeds on the details of one position or one side of the ball that other things slip. It is a very demanding job. But everything being equal, I would still want the quarterback guy, right? Because two things. Money is not infinite, and offensive coordinators, when they're successful, are very expensive to keep. And again, going back to the Alabama dynasty, they cycled through a ton of guys. Brian Daboll, Steve Sarkisian, Bill O'Brien. Those are just three off the top of my head. And they were able to make it work because of overwhelming talent. When you have the best talent and you hoard all the 5 stars, any system can work. But they were able to cycle through all those offensive systems. When you reset frequently, look at what happened to the defense. The third defensive coordinator in 4 years, and suddenly there's a short circuit here. A lot of this is built in overcoming attrition at this particular position. You need to make sure that side of the ball can produce points every year, because if the defense suffers, points can fix everything at a certain point. Lane Kiffin, says A. Campbell. I don't hate that. I don't hate Lane Kiffin. That's, again, one of those situations where I would say that makes some sense if you can lure him away from Ole Miss. I don't know that Penn State is a better situation than Ole Miss at this point. And I don't mean that as a disrespect to Penn State. It's just like in the modern land of college football, if you have resources and you have proximity, you have opportunity. And Penn State has resources, sure. I think Ole Miss has done some pretty good things in the transfer portal. They have been aggressive at going out and getting talent, like Trey Wallace. So there's an opportunity at wherever you are if you have the funding and the backing of donors and NIL and all those things. But yeah, a lot of these issues have been because they can't get a couple of things right. Receivers, receiver coach, and quarterback. And Drew Allar, we can talk about this now. This show's gonna go a little bit longer. So you can stick around forever you want, because now we're into a lot of these conversations that are now some big picture stuff with Drew Allar. Whatever his career is after this, I don't know if he'll have a medical exemption or anything with this injury situation. But the failure to get him into the first round was a 4-year experiment that didn't work. Same thing with Nick Singleton. Same thing with Denai Dennis Sutton. And, I've been pretty clear in my stance on Denai Dennis Sutton and his talent level and what kind of player he is. And maybe he's not the Abdul Carter that the NFL is looking for, but a talented player, right? And I don't want to take anything away from him, but he's not playing like a first-round draft pick right now. The class of 2022, they are seniors right now. This was the group to get them over the hump. And at quarterback, that whole long meandering thing that I don't even know if I got to the end of the point on. I apologize. It's probably been a long day. They failed to get their 5-star quarterback, which they've gotten very few of those, into the first round. And that is a program failure. You don't have a lot of opportunities if you're Penn State to do that. And that's, I think, heartbreaking for Drew. It is heartbreaking for Drew. I think he's a very good quarterback mind. I think he's a really good kid. I think he's too good of a kid. I think he's a little bit too normal to be, the psycho that's great at quarterback. But he's also maniacally dedicated to being great. I still would bet on him having a cup of coffee in the NFL. I think NFL teams are going to love him from the process standpoint, the talent standpoint, and buy low on a prospect whenever he gets there. But this has been to somebody's point earlier in the chat, this has been a program defining class in the wrong direction. Nick Singleton is lost, vision is gone. Whatever confidence is a shell of itself when he's got tunnel vision and he's just trying so hard to hurt somebody out there by running through them that he's not seeing the field. Zane Durant, the class of 2022, how talented that group was. It is a shame that it ended this way for this team. And ended is not, the season isn't over. Like, I'm going to be here next week at whatever time in the morning, 12:30 in the morning after Penn State plays Iowa. And I'm going to be here after the big noon kick where I don't know, is that a big noon kick anymore when Penn State plays Ohio State on the road? I don't know if that's going to be a big noon kick. It's a shock how this all turned out. That none of those 5 stars developed to NFL players. And all of them came back to Penn State for the chance to chase a national title. And now they're 3-3, and Allar, and I apologize, I'm trusting the reporting here in the chat that James Franklin said that. I've been looking down the barrel of the camera this entire time. So if that is untrue and I've said that multiple times, I apologize. I went off of what was in the chat. I should probably be a better journalist than that, but we're here live. We make mistakes. It is I am at a loss for words as to what the okay, I can confirm now it's out for. I don't think you'd lied to me, by the way. I just that's what reporting is like you get a thing and then you have to confirm it somewhere else. So now let's talk about Ethan Grunkemeyer. Spend a couple of minutes here talking about Ethan Grunkemeyer, the offense, and why maybe firing Andy Kotelnicki this week isn't the best idea. So Ethan Grunkemeyer, as you can see there from that tackle, and that play is not a tackle breaker, not a physical guy. But if you're asking who's a player that has the athleticism, quickness, let's say quickness, a little bit of hiccup in his giddy up, that can operate an option offense a little bit better, I do think that Grunkemeyer, and I thought this long term, had the opportunity to be that guy. And by the way, it's Ethan Grunkemeyer right now. Who knows if Jackson Smolik is going to get on the field? It's all the only thing I know is Beckham Kritz is not getting on the field. I think they would have to go to the run on quarterback, and I apologize, I forget his name. Jack Lambert? No. No. Anyway, I shouldn't be trying to do names. I can't remember names when people tell them to me in a conversation. But yeah, Ethan Grunkemeyer, I think, is a quarterback that can operate this system at I think there's promise there with Ethan Grunkemeyer. A couple things he does really well. RPOs. He is very quick. His throwing motion is fast. He's an aggressive player. I actually asked him, I think I asked him at one point, or asked somebody who knew of his coaching. I was like, does he watch a lot of Patrick Mahomes film? In high school, he loved playing out of structure. He was willing to, roll out of the pocket. At his most confident, he's rolling out of the pocket. He's letting guys buy time to get deep and throwing the ball down the field. There is an aggression in Ethan Grunkemeyer. There's more of a willingness to throw into tight windows. We saw that both good and bad in the early part of the season, where he threw an interception and then he threw an absolute dot for a touchdown on a deep throw down the seam. He's much better at those seam plays, RPOs, quick, where he has to flip his hips, turn and throw, than I think Allar, who is a little bit more of that lumbering his feet and his hips. Sometimes he struggles with when he's trying to reset them. Grunkemeyer is very precise. His mechanics are super clean. He is a very accurate quarterback. And now that I say that, maybe he throws 3 picks. I don't know the way this season is going, right? But when you're looking for an operator of this offense where the RPOs and read options were a big part of this, Grunkemeyer has some of those now moves, and I keep snapping my fingers if you don't hear that on the podcast, where some of those functional aspects of this offense might work a little bit better. The read option off the end might be a little bit better. Grunkemeyer might keep those a couple more times. He did that a little more in high school. There's a little more, I think, straight line speed than Allar had, and obviously he doesn't have the size and power through contact to make plays. But the decisiveness I've seen from him at times, I think, is good. There is probably a little bit of deer in the headlights. He's never done a lot of these things. He's never seen a lot of these things. And I feel so bad for him going up against Iowa. They're going to give him so many looks he's never seen before. They're going to have safeties in places that the sun don't shine. So if you want me to leave you, because I feel like I want to be hopeful. I want to be one of those guys that brings you a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. I think Ethan Grunkemeyer has some hope in this offense. But is he throwing to Kobe Howard? Is he throwing to Tyser Denmark? Because I do believe that Tyser Denmark can get, and I got to come over here, I do believe he can get 2 catches for 5 yards, which Trevor Pena is starting in his position, right? I do believe that he can get 2 for 5. And I do think that Kobe Howard can get 1 for 10 and drop a third down. I do think that they can do those things. Okay. Eric Wilson says, was paying these players to start the right move? Do we need to rethink NIL? So what Eric is saying here, and I'm struggling to read today. He's saying, was it right to pay Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, Drew Allar, Denai Dennis Sutton, and Zane Durant all to come back? Yes. Tactically, that was the right move. it was also the right move for those players. I think Drew Allar would have been a first-round draft pick last year. Honestly. You look at the draft class. His size, and again, what coaches want is they want a smart guy that can operate their offense, and they want somebody who can throw the ball to any part of the field. And that is Drew Allar. I think that you get him in a room with a coach, you see 6'5", dedicated. He's going to have the resume of people backing up his work ethic. He's going to get so many letters of recommendation, right? Essentially. I don't think he would have been a top 10 pick after last year. Somebody might have traded up into the first round to get him as a 31st, 32nd overall pick. It's worth a flyer. My theory is he's a second round quarterback, but there's no such thing as a second round quarterback, because the minute you're a second round quarterback, you get bumped up around, and then you want that 5th-year option on a guy. And so again, Will Levis wasn't a second-round quarterback. Will Levis was a third-round quarterback, but somebody liked the tools, so they wanted to take him in the second round. Second-round quarterbacks do not exist because they keep getting bumped up. If you're a second, you go to the first. If you're a third, you go to the second. So it was the right move. It was the right move to hire Stan Drayton, a guy that has coached multiple running backs to get to the NFL. It was the right move to bring back Zane Durant, a senior defensive tackle. By the way, I don't think it was as much the right move to bring back Zane Durant as that was Zane Durant's move. He was not going to go into the NFL draft and go highly. Denai Dennis Sutton, same thing. I don't think, from what I understand, his draft stock was going to be much above the 3rd, maybe the 4th round, and they thought paying him, coming back, the goal was to get him to be a first-round draft pick. The process after that has not been very good, right? None of those things happened. Also, the transfer portal. Here's where I'd say, does Penn State need to rethink NIL? The part that they do need to rethink is that there are players and there are positions that you need to go all in on. And I understand, they have done a great job of not having their roster poached. And they still have the talent, the youth, the depth, all those things. Those are not getting you anything right now. That didn't help you this year. And here's the brutal calculus that you have to make. If Penn State had gone, I watched Bo Pribula play against Alabama. I watched the final 9 minutes of the game. His receivers are pretty good. They're better than Penn State's receivers. Penn State went out and they got the receivers that were undervalued in the market, right? They got the guys that everyone thought okay, yeah, that might work out. Devontae Ross is the guy that has worked out. But Devontae Ross is 5'10", 170 and got hurt in the summer. There's a limit on what Devontae Ross is as a player. He's the speed guy, and you saw him get caught on a long run because he runs in the 4.4s somewhere. And again, I'm not trying to disrespect any of these players, but if you need to drop a bag to fix a half-decade-long problem at this point, going back to 2021, 2020, Jahan Dotson, that's it. That's the end of receivers that have made an impact at Penn State. And we can say Drew Allar's not the guy. And Drew Allar didn't throw to Keandre Lambert-Smith when he was open in his sophomore season. We can fire the offensive coordinator, and we can always point back to the quarterback not throwing the football. That is fair. At this point, the story is over. It didn't get better. But if you need to go get a guy for your senior quarterback's senior year to make him a number 1 overall pick, then I don't want to be the person out here asking for people to break the rules. But what you got to do is what you got to do. And the trio of receivers they got were obviously not good enough because they were working on the chemistry in the non-conference season, which is a red flag in retrospect. So if you got to drop a bag, you got to drop a bag. And Penn State has not been willing to do that, to upset the chemistry of the locker room. I can't imagine the chemistry is great right now. And this is the problem, is the counterfactual, right? They did this process. They ended up here. I don't know what it looks like if they were to do it the opposite way, who they would have lost, right? I can't argue the negative. Or Franklin would argue the negative to that point. But it is very clear that they did not have a defensive tackle that fits this particular style. They needed a dude that could eat up and chew up some, they call it chewing the scene, right? Chewing up the scenery. If you're an actor that's like commanding attention, there is no defensive tackle that is commanding attention up there on this particular front. And we knew that they were going to be young this year. And maybe they tried, right? And I think they probably did try. But whatever the difference between try and do, or, there is Yoda, right? There is no try, only do. Maybe they did need to drop a bag for whatever. But here's the problem is, then you go into recruiting for the class of 2025, and people say you need to drop a bag for X, Y, and Z, right? Joey O'Brien, Kari Adams, Luke Wafel. There's only so many bags, especially for Penn State. Like they are in the middle class, upper middle class of college football. And I think what we've seen when it comes to NIL and the transfer portal and the attrition around that upper middle class is either you skyrocketed to the top, the Oregons, say Ole Miss for now, Indiana has been really great with the transfer portal, or everything else consumed itself, right? Preston Stone in the transfer portal for the Northwestern team. Nico Iamaleava going to UCLA in how all of that stuff worked out, right? And so there is more parity amongst the average teams to then go after a Penn State, where there is not a clear disparity between the upper middle class and then the rest. There is a very clear distinction between the teams at the top and everybody else. And the everybody else is getting bigger, and that upper class is getting smaller. And Penn State tried to maintain what they were doing in this environment and not pivot to a more aggressive, find the individual players to make a difference, and sorry about your feelings if you're not that person. Oh, yeah, Jeff is back here. He says, Allar's legacy at Penn State will not be a good one, and that is disappointing for him and his family, and I don't want to dance on anybody's grave. It's true. What you just said is true, but I'm not here to want to revel in that, and I feel for the kid because he put literally everything out there for Penn State and came back, made that decision, and is here. Jeff says he's excited to see Grunk play. And the only reason to watch this dumpster fire, hopefully they'll throw in Howard and Denmark. And hopefully you guys are okay with mistakes. And so maybe for the next couple post-game shows, if I come back with the X's and O's after they lose, we can talk about that stuff. Because it is very frustrating of like knowing what's going on. Then you're like, I don't care. I want anger. And like, I get it. Like, that's what we're doing. But, yeah, we can talk about where the mistakes are and where the growth is and what happens if those things are part of the story. And for Ethan Grunkmeyer, I imagine the play calling and the playbook is going to be very limited, and they're going to do some very tailored things, and then they may run out of runway with that against a team like Iowa if it doesn't work. Shandy, I'm assuming this is a troll, says, Franklin needs time and money to turn this around. Have patience. Overreaction by Fairweather fans. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. And you know what? Because you paid twice to get it on air, you're welcome, Shandy. You get your troll. Any other thoughts here? Daniel says, get new Heisel from UCLA. The last time this happened, Daniel, and I'm not saying that you're wrong, because maybe Jerry Neuheisel's great. The last time Penn State got beat by an offensive coordinator and they're like, hire that guy, was Kirk Shiraka. And we all saw how 2020 played out. Now, there's a lot of unfair stuff, and I actually think what he's doing with Ethan Kaliakmanis has been awesome at Rutgers. They've got an offense that's entertaining. I've had more fun watching Rutgers' offense this year than any time watching Penn State over the last 9 games or so. But the last time Penn State hired the guy that beat them was Kirk Shiraka from Minnesota in 2019 to 2020. So, sure, throw that name in the hat for offensive coordinator or head coach. I don't know which one you're talking about, Daniel, but that's just throw all the names out there and we'll see what sticks. I'm just like, we're here, right? Drew Allar is not going to be the starting quarterback next week. Penn State is over the cliff. I have always said I want to see something new. You know, we've kind of done the same thing for a decade here, watching James Franklin and Penn State going back to 2016. There have been very good team, very consistent team, and now they are tumbling down. This is new. I guess it's not super new because, we watched all this stuff way back when during the beginning of the sanction era, but there was a different reason for it. And also, I wasn't doing this job. I was still on country music radio at that point. Okay, so James Franklin's press conference most likely is over at bluewhiteillustrated.com for you guys to listen to. We will have the instant analysis coming up in just a moment here from the guys at the stadium, and we're going to be getting, you can listen to James Franklin's comments after the game, all that coming up here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Everyone's talking about the dumpster fire. Here's the thing. We're not going to be changing what we do at Blue White Illustrated. We cover the team and the ups and the downs, the good and the bad, without the emotion of the wins and losses changing how we approach our jobs. Whether you like that or not, I can't help that. I have been programmed to do it this way. And hopefully that balance provides you the clarity of what's going on and how these things happen so that you can get the most out of the rest of the season. And I'm going to be doing, again, my analysis, good and bad, of what happens over the rest of the season over at bluewhiteillustrated.com to give you the insight into how these things are unfolding. I have, again, a pretty clear picture of what happened in this game of the tactical reasons, but I'm going to be breaking down every single play from both sides of the ball tomorrow on the Blue White Illustrated message board. I'll have my film study articles for you this week, and we'll have reaction from James Franklin and everything else that happens. There's so much stuff to get to. And this is just the beginning. This is the beginning of something new, and I hope you join us for that. And thank you to everyone who's been here for the post-game show and decided to stick around after a 22-21 loss to Northwestern. You guys have been great. Appreciate you. We'll be back on Monday with what we learned from the weekend, and of course, whenever news breaks from the Nittany Lions here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel, we'll talk to you then.